So the TEDx speaker says pedophilia is a natural sexual orientation. So she says we need to differentiate between child sex abuse and pedophilia, that pedophilia is a natural sexual orientation just like heterosexuality. So they're trying to, again, normalize it. So
And just so that people know, we're not just making this up. I want you to hear this for yourself. Actually, my understanding is it was a TED video, and because of the outcry, they actually took it down, but it's still on the internet nonetheless.
I want to quickly summarize where we are at the moment. According to current research, pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like, for example, heterosexuality. No one chooses to be a pedophile. No one can cease being one. The difference between pedophilia and other sexual orientations is that living out this sexual orientation will end in a disaster.
You mean the rest don't?
I don't want to waste any time. I asked the question, who are the real children of Israel? And I'd like to answer it right away.
Go ahead, dear minister.
Like any good lawyer in a courtroom, he tells you what he's going to prove.
All right.
And then he goes ahead and proves it and let the jury make the decision. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has said that Almighty God, Allah, revealed to him that the black people of America are the real children of Israel. And we are the choice of God. And that unto us he will deliver his promise.
First and foremost, giving all honor and praise to the creator of the heavens and the earth, we thank that great, benevolent, omnipotent God for his mercy, for his grace. We thank him for our ancestors in every form or fashion they may be found. We thank him for our founding fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We thank him for Moses and the Torah. We thank him for Yeshua and the Injil, and we thank him for Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah for the Holy Quran. Peace be upon all those noble and worthy servants of God. But surely if I can thank that great God of men and women, I know only from study, only from scripture, I must surely thank him for those who he has sent in this dispensation of time. And I can go on and on thanking Almighty God for all of those who he has sent to be a witness bearer to the great coming of this heaven on earth. But I must surely take the time to thank those who are personally responsible for my growth and my development. So I'm eternally grateful for the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the God that he represents, Master Fard Muhammad. I thank him for his students, the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the members of the Nation of Islam under his leadership and guidance. And I thank him for Munir Muhammad, that great and noble defender. May Almighty God be pleased with his life and his service, and the co-founders of Crow, Brother Shahid Muslim and Halif Muhammad, and all of those who are striving for peace and righteousness. I thank him again for sending the angel to visit upon His Excellency Ben Ami Hamashiach to impregnate him with a vision of returning back to the land of our forefathers to establish land, language, and culture. I thank him for Nasik Shaliak, that master teacher who joined Rabi Ben Ami in the efforts of development, the internal structure of the kingdom of Yah. And if those two were to have a spiritual child, it would most certainly be my father, the man who's personally responsible for me in my life, Prince Asiel Ben Israel, the international ambassador. In those righteous names, I greet you, my brothers and my sisters, in the words of peace and paradise of Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, peace be unto you. As always, it's a privilege, it's a pleasure to be before you, to have the opportunity to just speak truth to power and at a grassroots level galvanize so that we are those in this dispensation of time who are ushering in a new era. I would be remiss if I don't thank those women of God for sacrificing all that they have for us to be in this position. And I am personally grateful for my birthly and fleshly mother, Angel Muhammad, that beautiful Muslim follower of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was my first teacher, who gave me the foundation of how to be a great student to those men that I made mention of. I want to start off, and you can see by those who were here at the opening, that I played a clip from TED Talks that was a few years back, where this white woman had a whole conversation centered around the acceptance and the normacy of pedophilia. And this is something that anybody who's familiar with this particular platform or are, shalom, shalom, my brother, peace and blessings, have already been hearing, because those may be familiar with that clip. Everybody's familiar with the effeminization of the black man in particular, but the ungendering of the roles of the black woman and the black woman and the black man, and the black children as it relates to the structure of the black family, which we know is the foundation of any strong nation. And this platform, our conversations have been centered around, to the best of our ability, restructuring, reformulating, reprioritizing the family. So once we again learn how to be a family, once we again as men learn integrity, learn discipline, learn honor, learn respect, learn how to provide and protect, and the woman gets into her natural role again, where she can be the nurturer, where she can be the teacher again, where she can be the essence of femininity that is needed to produce strong children, which we know is our future. How do you ensure your success? It is by developing strong children, by producing intellectually developed offspring who are rooted in their history, in their culture, in their purpose. So I take the unmanning of the black man very serious. I take the ungendering of our people very serious. I take the confusion and the implementation of all of the diabolical schemes that have victimized our people very serious. Because I know until we fight the internal strife that has been developed, that has been impregnated on us and impressed upon us, until we are able to remove those ills, those pathologies, those diseases, we'll never be able to put on a serious fight against our outward oppressor and enemy, nor will we ever be able to have longevity in the development and the sustaining of our own place of peace. And so, when I hear that type of conversation that is spoken mostly in a crowd of other European people, I know that that conversation is directed for you and I, because pedophilia, brothers and sisters, homosexual behavior in history has always been inculcated in European society, in European culture. Now, we go back to the Hellenistic periods, when we go back to ancient Greek and Rome in particular, when you're talking about heterosexual mating habits, it was only, in their words, a necessary evil to produce offspring. But when you're talking about, when you look at joy, or you look at it as a pastime for recreational purposes, it was always homosexual, erotic behavior that was displayed. Now, again, why am I saying this? Why is this even a conversation? Because two things. Just like the anti-Semitism movement, anti-Jewish European movement that had been promulgated post-World War II, and even up until that point, but in particularly post-World War II, to diminish, to minimize the negative effects that have been placed on black people, not just here in America, but globally. I see a lot of similarities in the present ever-growing and ever-developing LGBTQ movement that has overshadowed anti-black racism, systemic racism, and oppression that we are facing. That, no, the black man who is the most often to be killed, the most often to be incarcerated, the most often to be redlined and to be ousted as far as the opportunities, economic advances. See, when you are marginalized to that extent, and then somebody else tells you, well, you're not really oppressed because you're a man, or you're not really oppressed because somebody else faces greater oppression than you, I see fault with that. Because we know from the removal of chattel slavery coming out of the antebellum South, there has been an assault on the black man, because they knew, hey, these people who just spent hundreds of years in chains and shackles and bondage are coming out of that condition and are able, through the family, because they have been able to reconstruct the family, to do for self, that we created communities that economically and educationally rival or surpassed those of their counterparts. That we, 40 years up from the cornfields and the cotton fields and the sugar fields of the South, had reached certain heights economically and society, that it rivaled even the upper echelon of the American hierarchy as it relates to resources and influence. That even though racism was still so pervasive, that it was so ubiquitous, we were able to create these hotspots where we were able to find refuge with one another from our oppressor. So they went in attacking the black man. When you look at our beloved sister Ida B. Wells, who here in Chicago talked about the lynching of black men, and the narrative that was promulgated from white society was that our men were being hanged because of their sexual perversions, that they were raping white women, young and old, that they had these sexual appetites that could not be quenched, and they were ravishing white women and destroying the white family fabric. And then when Ida B. Wells did just a little bit of due diligence and research, she was able to expose very easily the lies and deception. They were lynching black men who were prosperous, who were affluent, who were creating banks, who were creating businesses, who was building an economic base in their communities, who were being positive role models for their children and for their people. they were creating at the same time another government, another country that was, again, on pace to surpass America in just 50, 60 years, white America that I'm speaking of. And so, again, I'm going back to these tactics now. So they used the feminist movement, amongst other things, but I'm just saying on a grassroots level, to try to divide the black woman and the black man by trying to co-opt Sojourner Truth, and I said Ida B. Wells, and these great women who supported and backed their black men and their black family, who seen the power and the unity and with us being together. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, brother. It's a great book by Brother Alan G. Johnson. I don't have it in front of me at this particular moment. Otherwise, I would reference it. But anything that you want to interject into the conversation, put it in the comment section, and we'll put it up, brother. Because we're having a conversation. So it can go both ways now. But as I were, they use white racist women who, at the same time of leading the feminist movement, who was started on the backs of black women, like I mentioned before, they were also still practicing white supremacy. They were the forerunners for such insidious plans like the eugenics, Planned Parenthood, finding a way to curl the population growth of our people, trying to stunt or halt or diminish our ability to procreate and reproduce ourselves. Seeing that, hey, we have to find a way to cut them off from their strength. Yeah, we know they're succeeding now, but how do we 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now be able to break up that continuity that they have? And so they were fighting it on both ends. One more literal and physical by using contraceptives and using other means to stop reproduction. But they also use more psychological and cultural means to try to cut us off from our source, which is our family. Man, woman, child equals the power of God, equals the power of life, produces the foundation for nationhood, for independence, for sovereignty. And so they needed other ways. So again, they seen our affinity for all oppressed people throughout the planet. And at the time, it seemed that the people who had taken on the mantle of Judaism had such a close peace and blessings, my beloved brother, Dr. Powers. Thank you so much. Had taken on the mantle of representing them and helping them, because we said if we can help what seemed to be our Jewish brothers, who we knew matched not just us scripturally, because those old hymns that we used to sing on the sand plantations were the stories of Jerusalem, were the stories of Moses taking us away from Pharaoh's land. We knew our connection to the Bible, historically and prophetically. So we said, okay, if these people resonate with that, they must be our brothers and sisters. And so we knew that we could create an allyship with these brothers though we didn't see color at the time, though that was the premise in which they were operating from, we helped them. I spoke about last week on Brother Jamil's show, the Munir Muhammad show, about how you had Philip A. Randolph, Whitney Young, and other civil rights leaders push the Jewish agenda harder than they did their own black rights here in America. They were greater advocates for the state of Israel than they were the black nation. I spoke about our brother Ralph Bunche, who single-handedly helped produce the very state of Israel which we know today in 1948 in his political position and role. I spoke about William Blyton in the mid-1800s, who promoted Zionism and the empowerment of a Jewish state, even in the time when we were still in chains and in shackles. We weren't up completely from the slave plantation, and we were still looking for other people and looking how we could help other people in their pursuit of freedom. Because we were just talking about ourselves, little did we know. But because somebody took on that mantle, we still seen it as our obligation to help and assist. Look at Baynard Rustin, another black man who, and personally, a little indifferent about brother because, and I don't blame any black man, though I have to identify the faults again. I don't like attacking my people, even when they've done ignorant things. But ignorant means lack of knowledge and understanding. And though he may have been cognizant of what he was doing, he had been reduced and broken to a point where he wasn't even his true self anymore. Because I come from the school of thought of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is once a black man understands his true knowledge and taps into his true nature, he can only do right. He can only be righteous because that is what he was created from. That is his source. So you can call it naivety, but I know that I've seen brothers on the streets when put in precarious positions that God came out of them and they were able to elevate past their environment and what they had been traditionally practicing. So I know the reality of those statements that I just made, which was authored by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But Baynard Rustin, not only was he an advocate for gay rights in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, which he solely became in the latter part of his life, he was a big Jewish advocate. Big Jewish, the state of Israel advocate. He was the one who kind of took Dr. Martin Luther King under his wing and really pushed him to the nonviolent aspect of the civil rights movement. He would later call our spiritual leader Ben Ami a Hitler for taking black people to a land that we read about in scripture, that we studied and sang about all the way back to the slave plantations. To be a free people, not just for Hebrew Israelites, but for anybody who just wanted to live in peace and harmony. That's why the Kifar, or the village of peace, was open to any and everybody who just wanted to live a clean and righteous life. Shalom, shalom, mighty prince, Charlene Dean. But because he was so broken, he had been butt broken. Baynard Rustin, I'm speaking of, he had such an affinity for his oppressors. He, instead of talking about the oppressive state of Israel and how it disregarded our claim and our right to that land, and how it did everything it possibly could as a nation state, not individuals, but as a nation state, to keep us in a subservient and complacent position. He called us the Hitler. So the unmanning of the black man comes in so many ways. And so I say that we are in a position now that we have to refute all of the propaganda that has been put in the ears and on the eyes of our children, but even our adults who fall victim of this type of lies and deception. That lady knows the history of Europeans when she said pedophilia is natural as heterosexuality, and it should be accepted. There are organizations in America that is as old as the Boy Scouts. Shalom, shalom, dear Prince Cohen. Matter of fact, the original founder of the Boy Scouts was a homosexual man who practiced pedophilia. Do the research. But they have organizations that are centered around pedophilia. So who was she having that conversation to? She was having it to the black man and the black woman, because you are the last of the races who do not accept pedophilia at all. It is against your nature. Especially those here in America and the diaspora, because we seen and we still have in our DNA the horrors of the breeding farms, when they force mothers to lay with sons and fathers to lay with daughters and brothers to lay with sisters, because they didn't import slaves no more because of the rebellious nature of those coming from the continent and those who had wised up on the reality of what was happening in the transatlantic slave trade. So they said it would be more advantageous for us to create breeding farms here in America. So to them to produce the greatest slave physically, they used siblings to mate, parents to mate with children. And they also knew the psychological effects, because for a man to lay with his daughter, for a mother to lay with her son, for a brother to lay with her sister, psychologically you are destroyed at the highest level. So you are reduced to a shell of yourself at best. Because to do and to perform that act, even against your own will, it takes the very essence of who you are. It removes your soul. So they knew from that point you would just be a physical apparatus used for physical means. The buck-breaking process of the black man is to remove the essence of the original man, to make you a shell of yourself so that you become just a physical body without any mind, spirit, or soul. Transhumanism, something else. We're going to get to that maybe later this day or another day. I spoke about it before, though. Also said that, remember, the impetus on their technological advances is to make artificial intelligence, quote unquote, more human-like, is to make humans more artificial. Because they know they can never replicate the complexities of the human mind, nor can they even try to emulate the essence of the human soul, especially the original man. It's impossible. There is no type of technology can do that. I don't care how many microchips you make. Resistors, capacitors, transistors, they can't even compare to the advanced science and technology of the neurological systems of the body, the cardiovascular systems of the body, the lymphatic systems of the body, which all have their own brains in them, their own thinking mechanisms. So they said, hey, well, if we can take to the best of our ability the soul of the man, we can make him more artificial, therefore making artificial intelligence. And how do we know that we have been made artificial? The black man. See, when you read certain white intellects or scholars, those in the realm of psychology, sociology, anything in that manner, they say that the black man has lesser cognitive capacity than the white man, that he thinks at a lower level. He has lower IQs. Now, granted, all things equal, it doesn't even match. You were literally the constructors of their world. Everything of consequence you've created, and you created it under duress. A lot of the greater inventions came from you being under duress. So that's how great your mind is. But let me speak to some truth in that statement. One has to be operating on a lower cognitive level for them to perpetually accept their state and then convince themselves that they're not currently or presently under the oppressive hand of their enemy, even though their reality paints it out as clear as day. Listen to what I'm saying. That no, it's not native to the black man or woman to think in that manner, but because of the buck breaking process, that's not just a physical buck breaking, but a mental and spiritual and emotional buck breaking, an intellectual buck breaking, that you have accepted your lot in life and that you have gotten to the point where you don't even put up a resistance. How do we know? Yes, we can get in the streets and we'll protest and we'll tear up some things. And then we go back to the same thinking that we were doing before, the same status that we were at before. Yes, we will get emotionally upriled at the sight of such egregious acts as the killing, the massacring of our people, such as George Floyd. And then they tell us he's been convicted. And then we get back complacent again. We start singing and dancing and celebrating. We have some of our older brothers in the fight go on national television and break down into tears as if all of the hundreds of years that we have faced have suddenly been erased. That there is no more oppression, there's no more racism, there's no more inequity and inequality in our lives. Not soon after the conviction was made, another one of our children were being gunned down in the street by the hands of police. Not even talking about just other unnecessary murders of our people. And yet we cried as if we had a victory, because we've been conditioned and contextualized to there is no redress for our people. There is no recourse that we actually have that is not determined by our oppressor. See, that's a lesser thinking. That's a people operating on lower cognitive function. That how can you consciously put in the position, put in the hands of those who are the creators and the perpetuators of your pain, the one who's going to bring you redress. You have to bring your redress. You have to bring your resolution. You have to be the one who removes the ills of society that you currently are faced with. So again, we're talking about buck breaking at the greatest level. Big shout out to brother Tariq Nasheed, who came out with the movie Buck Breaking and everything he's doing with the hidden colors and trying to reorient the thinking, not just of older people, but younger people, by creating a digestible form of information that our young people can be not just entertained by, but informed by for a number of hours. I thank brother for that. But this is a mission that we all have to do, because the teaching and the elevation of our children starts in the home. I said at the beginning of COVID, when the schools were shut down, that was a blessing in disguise, because one, we were able to see the reality of what our children actually had been learning or had not been learning through their time and their tenure in their schools. And it gave us the ability to finally, because we were at home with them, and those who didn't look at it as a punishment, but looked at it as a blessing, to teach and to give the children what they truly need to be successful. Did a lot of us take that advantage? Of course not. But those who did, kudos to you. Kudos to you, because we need to break up this monotonous, perpetual cycle that we in of perpetuating and participating in our own oppression. We need these type of acts to kind of shake us up and rattle us a bit so that we can again get back on the path of producing our own freedom. I went to Sinetta House 2 weeks ago. It'll be a week so now. Yeah, a week, not 2 weeks. Man, this time is flying. And I went there representing my father and the Hebrew kingdom and nation in Dimona. I went there repping my mother and representing the nation of Islam as so taught by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. But I came wearing both of those coats, but I came speaking only about unity. I said, I'm not coming here to convert you one way or the other. I'm not coming to press upon you my beliefs or my ideologies. I'm not coming to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm not here to debate nor challenge anybody's belief. I am coming to seek those who said that they love their people. Thank you so much, brother. I have another one he hasn't put out yet. It's about 30 minutes. It's a beautiful interview that I did with Dr. Reggie. Prayerfully he puts it out, but we're definitely going to be doing some more things. But I came there simply for that. I said, man, I want to build. And guess what? Not only am I coming, I came on my own dime. I go everywhere on my own dime. Nobody's ever seen me ask for 1 cent of donations or anything, even though my mentor, Brother Munir, said you never have a meeting and not have people offer up donations because you wanted to make them accountable for their time. So I'm not listening to my teacher in that regard because I know that our people sometimes are taken aback, and I shouldn't be apprehensive about those things, especially when I know they will be allocated to something that is needed and serious, but I pay my own dime. And not only do I pay my own dime, wherever I go, I donate and I help those who are practicing or putting into practice what they say they believe to help our people. My brother-in-law said, man, what you giving all the money? I said, I'm not giving them. What do I get it for if not to help my people? Because I know how hard this work is. I know how hard it is to do it for yourself, let alone try to show and prove that somebody else is going to help in this mission and in this fight. I know how easy it is for us to spend money on frivolous things, but when it comes down to supporting those who say they believe in this great work, we are unable to do so. I was in New York. I'm supposed to go to LA next week, and then I'll be in Atlanta for the next couple months. Then I'm jumping. If you're in Israel, then I'll be over there, hopefully, in a couple more months. I got to finish some things here first, though. But when you haven't been broken, you don't look at anything as an impossibility. You look at it as not only a challenge, but a necessity. Because I understand economics is energy. Just like my time is energy. So if I'm willing to sacrifice my time to go places and to build with brothers, though I know I'm going to receive scrutiny, which is justified. I understand a lot of people have proclaimed to be for our people, who have positioned themselves to have all of the outward expressions that, as one who is sincere about their initiatives and their objectives, and yet be a wolf in sheep's clothing. I am very aware and clear of that. So if you have apprehension, I'm not against that. But all I ask is, don't judge me on what you think I believe. Listen to the actual words that I'm speaking. Judge me on the content of my character and what my actual intent is. That should be the determining factor of whether you think what I'm saying is intelligent or not. That's all we're saying. And so let me get to the initial message what I'm talking, because we got on butt breaking. I showed the pedophilia thing, and I wanted to talk about an interview that I seen with brother Mark Lamont Hill. And I like my brother to a certain extent, and I know he faced a lot of backlash when he traveled over to Israel, and he showed the Palestinians and how the Jewish state of Israel had been treating the Palestinians and somewhat us as well. And he got fired, I believe, from his teaching job at one of the universities, and a lot of the main TV spots that he had on CNN as a contributor and those things were put to a halt, and he kind of had to do his own thing. But I also seen from that, and this is not against my brother Mark Lamont Hill, but the behavior that I spoke about, similar to Bernard Rustin, to Philip A. Randolph, and those others who have been broken and who articulate certain points that are counterproductive to the plight of our people. He was interviewing Dr. Umar Johnson, and in their conversation, I look forward to it, my beloved brother. And I must direct message you my number so that we can communicate. And in this conversation, I said, this is how we get distracted. This is how things get conflated and we lose focus of what the real objective and agenda is. Listen, no black man should ever take on, at this point, the conversation or the fight of somebody else. We have to learn how to galvanize around each other's situation, resolve that, and then we can help others. And to equate a false narrative that black men, after I just gave those quick little stats, are equal in its bigotry and hate as the white man is ludicrous. And though you may not be intentionally an enemy to our people, the words and the message that you're articulating is just as devastating and detrimental than those that come directly from our oppressor. Because if you do it under the guise of helping our people, then you in our skin, we fall victim to that, and then we start to repeat those talking points, and we lose sight of the real mission and objective. Listen, this whole trope that black men are the greatest homophobes, what we cause hate to homosexuals or trans, that's so untrue. Because for you to physically cause harm, unless in mass, no, you just go out into the streets and doing that, and we know that's not the case. But in intimate situations, you would have to be in an intimate situation. And no heterosexual man is in an intimate situation with a transgender or homosexual, because there's no need for it. It has nothing to do with hate. It's just you're not in that position. That's just not your crowd. So one would suppose that the harm, if they're receiving it, and the hate and the big that they're receiving will come from those who are intimate situations with them, meaning other homosexuals or transgenders. So don't put that on us. The black man is the most accepting part and parcel of our problem. No, we're against homosexuality for ourselves because we understand the need on every level on why we must remain not just a man, but exude as much masculinity as possible. But because we don't choose that life, we're not going out seeking to do harm to somebody else. Don't ever make that equivalent, brother, or anybody. You're just like what I spoke about in the early 1900s of how the white man lied and falsified that the black man was coming into the white community to rape his women. But when you go back to the plantations, not only was our women being raped by the slave master, not only was our men being buck broken and being raped by the male slave master, white women was raping black men too. And you probably say, how the hell is that little white woman gonna rape, those big black slaves? Shit, was it consensual? That's rape. Did we do it because she said if we didn't, she would go to the slave masters and said we tried to rape her, therefore we would lose our life or lose the life of our wife or our children or whatever other atrocity that they threatened us with? So let's not play that game. I'm gonna play the clip real quick.
We see that there is a school. Because I am so real. Black man, which means you have to do something about mass incarceration, miseducation, psychiatric medication, psychological frustration. Suicide, for example, Dr. Hill, is the second leading cause of death for black males 1 to 19. And it is the third leading cause of death for black males 20 to 44. But that's not being discussed. So they would rather focus on either gender or the child as opposed to the family unit. Because if you focus on the family unit, you have to save all black people.
So let's talk about that, because one of the places that you and I have disagreed, not necessarily directly but indirectly, is around this issue, right? One of the things that you've said is that we are blaming the black woman, but then there have been times, and maybe your position on this has changed, but over the last 10 years where you've talked about sort of black mothers and how they have engaged their sons in ways that have made them not become the kind of men you want them to be, or we want them to be, ways that make them become gay, or how people are turning gay, that there's a certain way that can be understood as a kind of blame on black women. How do you jive this very real concern? And I agree with you that we shouldn't be stereotyping or stigmatizing or blaming black women for the effects of patriarchy, misogyny, white supremacy, all that stuff, with this idea of saying that if black women don't maneuver or move in a certain way, that they're actually harming the black family or not allowing men to be produced in the way we want them to be.
Absolutely. Well, first, to clarify, I've never blamed black women for black males becoming homosexual. What I have said, though, based on my work directly with children as a school psychologist, as a therapist, working almost 25 years, is more than 90% of all the black men I've worked with who had admitted to homosexual behavior or identity were sexually abused in their prepubescent years of their life. So I blamed sexual abuse as being one of several triggers that can lead to a homosexual lifestyle. Now, of course, that was considered controversial then. It is still considered controversial now, but I stand by it because, yes, and I stand by it because I have seen it and I have heard the confessions and I have seen the relationship. But with black mothers and black fathers, I think we can all do a better job. So when I speak of a black woman needing to do a better job with discipline, it's not because it's the woman's job to discipline her son, but it becomes the black woman's job to discipline her son because America has a policy of destroying black males and sending us to the prison and to the graveyard. And as a result of that, the woman whose traditional responsibility in the home was one of a nurturer and a supporter, she now becomes a boundary keeper and a disciplinarian. And a lot of mothers find that difficult to do, of any race. And I think it's unfair that black women have to provide both the masculine and the feminine nurturance in the household, but it's the situation that we're in. I would blame the black men in the community, Dr. Hill, for not stepping up to help our single mothers raise these boys. You will never hear Dr. Umar say that the black woman is the reason we have dysfunctional black males in our society. First, I would blame racism.
Now I want you to hear what's about to be said. This is important what's coming up. And Dr. Umar is taking on a position that we have traditionally and continually will promote, is that we have to be, as black men, more conscious of the role that we play and the responsibility that we have as far as reorganizing and restructuring the black family so we can reorganize and structure the black community. Therefore, we can reorganize and restructure the black nation so that we can have power again. And power, we know, is not necessarily through the force of our sheer might, nor through the barrel of a gun, but it's through our integrity, through our intellect, the ability to be on code, to work collectively together, and to use our energies, use our ingenuity to produce things that have sustainability. Now I'm going to go back to Dr. Umar. Listen to this.
And second, I would blame all the able-bodied black men who watch these sisters struggling to raise these boys on their own and don't step up to lend a helping hand.
The idea of destroying black men is an interesting one. I heard your commentary that I thought was really interesting on the Breakfast Club. But one of the things that came up where I was a little struck was the conversation about Deshaun Watson. And the sort of idea of a conspiracy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, whether it's Deshaun Watson, whether it's Bill Cosby, I could even mention other names. I'm seeing all these accusations and almost no charges. And it concerns me, Dr. Hill, because it appears that America has gotten to a point in her viciousness towards destroying black masculinity. And I want to be clear, there is an all-out war on black masculinity that is as old as America is herself, but has intensified in recent decades. And that war on black masculinity seeks to make the black man a convicted felon before he has ever had an honest trial in court. And I'm seeing entire careers being destroyed based off of allegations where the new rationale says that if 10 women say it, it's true. Or if 20 women say it, it's true. Or if 30 women say it, it's true. But I thought you could only be convicted after a trial of your peers in a court. And that's not happening. We're seeing black men get politically and socially lynched in media.
But what about the word of women, right? I mean, if we have, for example, 30 women or 50 women or however many.
Now listen to this deceptive language that's being used. And again, I'm not here to belittle my brother, Mark Lamont Hill, but I have to be critical of what he is doing, the behavior that he is showing and that he's producing right now. See, the behavior must be eradicated. I'm not into attacking individuals or personalities. Talk by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, we don't attack individuals, but we attack their motives. We attack the position. We attack their ideologies, especially if they're counterproductive and counterintuitive to our advancement. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but when it starts to affect negatively our people en masse, we have a responsibility and an obligation to dispel falsehood, lies, and deception with truth.
Women at this point we have with Bill, and they're all saying the same thing. Some know each other, most don't. They're making these allegations. At what point do we say, hey, there's something to this because we actually trust women, right? And not just a single slice of women, whether it's black women, white women. I'm saying women in general. With Deshaun Watson,
I'm not
you have now dozens of allegations. No, I know. But I'm saying is, if we're,
I'm not saying.
No, I know you're. I know you're not saying. No, I know you're not saying it because they're women necessarily. I'm saying though, when I'm talking about the fact that these are allegations that are often levied against black men. You're saying, and these allegations are levied by women. I'm saying when women are making these allegations in a culture that often normalizes rape, that has always historically normalized the abuse and harm to women's bodies that has been indifferent to rape and sexual violence, what does it mean for us to say, you know what, even if dozens of them say it, we shouldn't take it seriously? We believe black men when they say the police harass them, beat them, shoot them. We were on Derek Chauvin's behind long before a trial. We wanted George Zimmerman gone long before he went to court because we said, you know what, black men's words mean something and black men's lives mean something. I heard you say the same thing, and I agree with you on Ma'Khia Bryant, right? We have to value her life before we ever get to a courtroom. But why is it when it comes to sexual violence against women, it becomes a conspiracy against the black man, as opposed to the possibility that these black men have done harm, whether it's to straight women, queer women, trans women, whether it's to each other? Why can't that be a possibility, particularly when it's coming from dozens? I'll give you a chance to respond.
Now listen to that. Listen to that. I'm going to play what Dr. Umar's response is, but I want you to listen to what's being said. See, this subtle sleight of hand is what keeps confusion in the midst of our people, who keeps us at odds with one another. When you're talking about systemic racism, you're talking about the inability for black people to have any course of redress or justice in a system. Now, the point that Dr. Umar is making, whether it be Deshaun Watson or Bill Cosby or those of their ilk, and we're not condoning whatever behavior, but we're talking about something else. Because if rape was initially the problem and it was such mass numbers, they would not wait that long to prosecute those brothers. We're talking about people who may have participated in unproductive or unsavory behavior, but we're not talking about criminality now. But because you are black, you're automatically a criminal. And everything you do, it will be equated to criminality. So for Brother Dr. Lamont Hill to try to equate the two, to say we don't hear women, no, that's not the case. Because who are the greatest protectors of women, of black women? It's the black man. There has never been a white man, an Asian man, or any other Mexican that protect black women in mass or even individually like we have. When you talk about a lot of the physical abuse that is being perpetuated against black women, it comes out of the homes of interracial relationships. When you're talking about the degradation of black women, when you're talking about the rape and the pedophilia, it comes from those who have been adopted in certain homes by other white people or non-black. And then you go and homophobe is your Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christians. They're the one that says deaths to homosexuals, so forth and so on. Don't equate that, brother. The only black men that may have done harm to a transsexual or somebody is those who have been ousted by that transsexual. But guess what? They're not heterosexual. They're homosexual again themselves because they participate in the act. So you're talking about people in that group that does that. But when you speak about the Ed Bucks, where black men, homosexual black men end up dying every day, nobody's saying nothing. When you talk about the pedophilia farms like Jeffrey Epstein and all of those who were connected in it, none of those white people have been faced with any charges, even though you got people that can point and connect the dots to their participation. When you talk about Bird Island right off the coast of South Africa, that white supremacist Boerish European was practicing not just anti-black apartheid regimes for numbers of decades, but then had sexual pedophilia islands. What the hell are you saying, brother Mark Lamont Hill? You can't equate the two. They're false parallels. They're false parallels. And so what we're saying, so simply, is that this is buck breaking. See, you don't have to necessarily put on a dress. You don't necessarily have to wear lipstick. But when you go against your own best self-interest, when you attack a brother, whatever you feel about him, that's trying his best to uplift and help black people in whatever form that may be, and you have a platform where you can bring light to the good, but yet and still bring up the negative and try to misconstrue his words, that's a problem. Again, you're absolutely right. I like brother Mark Lamont Hill. Came to the community. But he knows this is deceptive. And that's why I'm not attacking the brother, but I'm attacking the behavior. Let me let him finish.
As a matter of fact, I don't want to cut you off, so we're going to go to commercial, and I'll give you the full time on the break to respond. Everybody, we'll be right back with Dr. Umar Johnson. Welcome back to Black News Tonight. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to jump right to Dr. Umar. I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that, and then I have a final question for you.
Yes, sir. Good question. I would say that violence by the police and sexual violence are different in that in most of the police violence cases, Dr. Hill, we have witnesses, at least a half dozen in many cases. And in almost every case, there's been at least 1, 2, or 3 people who not only saw the entire encounter between the police officer and their victim, but in many cases, it was captured on video. So it becomes indisputable. Officer Chauvin's assassination of George Floyd was caught on video. But by contrast, the accusations against Bill Cosby were not caught on video. The accusations against Deshaun Watson were not caught on video. And then we also see a difference in the manner in which black men who are accused of sex crimes are treated in comparison to white men. Whatever happened to the case against the owner of the New England Patriots? Why didn't that get the same energy? Why didn't the case involving Ben Roethlisberger of the Pittsburgh Steelers, why didn't that get the same energy? What about the Duke lacrosse team of several years ago who sexually assaulted a young black female student? Why didn't that get the same energy? What about Marv Albert, who was the leading NBA announcer at that time, accused of sexual abuse, and it didn't get the same energy? So all we're saying is sexual abuse is wrong. Black women suffer from it way more than white women do. As a black man, understanding the history of the sexual objectification of the black woman in her body, I'm extremely sensitive to the issues of black women when it comes to sexual abuse and exploitation. But at the same time, I will not stand by and watch a black man get publicly lynched before he has had his day in court.
Right. I guess it's hard for me to take that answer without asking the question, rhetorical question of, well, what does freedom look like? I agree with you. White men get away with all kinds of stuff. They do all kinds of harm. White men have destroyed this world from the moment they've been on the planet. You and I will agree on that. But my vision of freedom is not to be as unchecked, as unaccountable, as violent, as patriarchal, as misogynistic, as transphobic, as imperialistic as white men are. I don't.
Do you hear what he's saying, brothers and sisters? Do you hear what he's saying? And see, this is, again, why I had to play it to the end, why I had to bring this up and have this conversation. Because as we talk about the unmanning of the black man and we talk about the restoration of the black God, these conversations must be had because he's an intelligent brother. He's a well-groomed brother. He's an articulate brother. He's well-traveled. He has the gifts and the talents to help our people, and he has helped our people in many regards. But when you speak like this, I have to question your intent and your motives, and justifiably so. How can you, brother, with all the knowledge and all the history that you have accumulated, that you have studied, that you have researched, can you part your lips to say something as audacious as that we can't be as imperialistic, as homophobic, as trans, whatever else he said, as white people, as if that's even possible? The black man, especially here in America, is the least privileged, is the least in power, is the least capable of implementing anything on a mass level that has the ability to alter or disrupt somebody's way of life at the present moment. And to equate the two, that's diabolical, brother. That's diabolical.
I don't want a world where I'm free to be as reckless as Harvey Weinstein. I don't want Bill Cosby to be treated like Harvey Weinstein. I want Harvey Weinstein to be as accountable as Bill Cosby. what has been made to be. For me, that's what freedom and justice look like. And so I think too often, and this isn't a critique of you per se, but a critique of sort of how we talk about this issue, is that sometimes we keep pointing to white men who haven't been held accountable and saying, well, look, they didn't do anything, when in fact we should be saying they need to be accountable, but we need to be accountable because so much of the harm that happens, whether it's sexual violence, whether it's transphobic violence, whether it's rape culture, we are accountable for that. Black men do harm in the world. Black men aren't the sole source of the harm. Black men didn't create the harm. Black men shouldn't be isolated for the harm. But black men do harm, and there has to be a way that we hold ourselves accountable. And I think if we don't, we run the risk of reinforcing patriarchy and in so many other forms of violence in the world. Brother, we got to go, but you are welcome to come back whenever you want. We can finish the conversation. We can do another venue as well, brother. But thank you for coming, and thank you for having a great dialogue.
Well, that's it. Now, sweating back there listening to that brother, man, because that's ludicrous. And he kept going back to us causing hate, causing violence against transgenders and homosexuals and those. Brother, what are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? I want to read something, and I'll close out on this. Now, what I'm about to read came from this white man right here, Henry Kissinger, who was a policymaker, Secretary of State, and political influence in America, even to this point now. But listen to this. And I'm going to tell you why it's not coincidence or happenstance that in a conversation that did not involve anything to do with homosexuals, transgenders, or anything of that ilk, it kept being brought up. It kept being added into the conversation. I'm going to tell you why. In 1974, Henry Kissinger recommended homosexuality for the population control in the black community. Homosexuality as a population control strategy in the black community. In 1972, Rockefeller World Population Council, with influence from Planned Parenthood, which we know was a eugenics program, association decided that it would be best if homosexuality would no longer be treated as an abnormality or abnormal condition. And it could be promulgated in the black community as a healthy lifestyle choice. In 1973, homosexuality was voted out of the DSM, which is the book for mental disorders and other things of that nature. It was removed from the DSM as a mental disorder. In 1974, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger created the National Security Study Memorandum 200, the implications of worldwide population growth for U.S. security and overseas interests. It looked specifically at strategic possibilities to control the black population rate across the world. Dr. Henry Kissinger proposed in his memorandum to the NSC that depopulation should be the highest priority of U.S. foreign policy towards the third world. The inner black community is considered third world, just to let you know, because you have a greater GDP than majority of the nations on the planet. But because of your inability to control the majority of the necessities, which would be banking, grocery stores or food development, and education and hospitals. Since you don't have control or sustainable, productive institutions in those particular areas, you are considered a third world nation yourself. And then globally, how they see Africa. As Donald Trump said, those SHIT whole countries, speaking about all black nations. He quoted reasons of national security, and because the U.S. economy will require large and increasing amounts of minerals from abroad, especially from less developed countries. Wherever a lessening of population can increase the prospects for such sustainability, population policy becomes relevant to resources, supplies, and to the economic interests of the U.S. And it goes on to have other things. Yes, sir. Reference the drama of the gifted child. Okay, we're going to get this book, brother. We're going to get it, and we're going to do an excerpt from it in the next coming weeks. Because I don't have that book, but I'm going to get it. If you recommended it, brother, I'm going to get it. So, now, we didn't look at homosexuality as a mental disorder because we're haters of people and their sexual orientation. We didn't practice or perpetuate homosexuality because we wanted to reproduce ourselves, because we seen the power in our ability to create offspring, because we understand longevity can only be sustained if you're able to procreate and reproduce yourself and better versions of yourself. That's how you create legacy. We understand that. So why would we cut ourselves off from our future by practicing certain behaviors that won't ensure our future? We can't live here forever. And since we can't live here forever, why not reproduce ourselves so we can live here forever? So we can continue to grow and evolve. I'm going to find out exactly where to purchase the book, and I'm going to direct message you, brother, and we're going to get on top of it for me and you. And so when you look at why every time we turn on our television, when you look at the Black Lives Matter movement that started from Hands Up, Don't Shoot and was transformed into BLM, which I read on this very platform, the motives, the intent, the mission statement of Black Lives Matter. And they said that they wanted to remove the traditional family structure. That they wanted to remove man, woman, and child. So how did we go from fighting black oppression, systemic racism? How do we go from protecting ourselves in this anti-black war to all of a sudden that's not really our objective? We need to be other than ourselves. What happened? But that's what happens when you allow your enemy to co-opt your movement. He's able to redirect it in whatever direction he sees fit. But guess what? It benefits him. And it leaves you in a position of the powerless. It leaves you in a position of the powerless. I told you, Bayard Rustin, the one in the 60s who co-opted the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King, who they eventually assassinated, who made him do nonviolence. The same person who was a proponent of nonviolence was violently shot in the head, preaching nonviolence. And the person who was a great influence of him going that direction ended up saying 2 decades later that the civil rights movement was really about gay rights. He had been buck-broken and he went to compromise others. And so this is why this platform exists. This is why we're talking about these different things and we're attacking at the root these type of deceptive conversation and talking points so that we don't fall victim again. So we don't have to see another Dr. Martin Luther King be co-opted and killed, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. so that we can finally be in a position that the oppressor isn't determining our outcome, but we, tied in with the woman, tied in with the child, is producing that God mind again, and we produce our own future, our own reality that ensures our freedom, ensures our success, ensures our victory, where we can finally see peace, know peace, and live in peace, and our children and our offspring and our progeny can be able to benefit from it perpetually. I leave it there. I thank you for listening. As I leave you, as I greeted you in the words of peace, Shalom Alaikum, Assalamu Alaikum, peace be unto you.
On my way to Bootsy Bello with hella though. Try and think what I'ma tell them when they get alone. I'm a glutton for women I shouldn't yearn for. Shouldn't be tempted, but baby, I like to hurt. Or maybe cause I was searching, I found me the perfect person, but me and her didn't work out. She buried what you worked for. And I carry the bitterness of a cola nut. Now, Jerry and my parents never showed much. Womanizer probably could have been a feminist, cause I respect them, but Lord, I got polygamy problems. The hoodie come from Bonnie's, spending money is therapeutic. The way the shit, they don't think that you care to buy. So we buying Prada, Balenciaga like it is nada. And the Ferrari, my favorite's God and tax problems. Pierre Moss, I dropped 10 on my last visit, and half that up in Saks. I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo, look. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Spent about 2 racks on handmade do rags. Assuming I'm